In an essay, Henry David Thoreau urges us to live deliberately. He cites it as his reason that he moved to Walden Pond. He wrote, "If it proves to be mean, why then get the whole and genuine meanness of it." Now the word mean in this particular context has a particular meaning. It doesn't mean mean as they're being mean to me, but it means mean as in reduced to its starkest reality. The harsh realities of life, the bare bones, and to break these bones and suck the marrow out of life. The third principle of Unitarian Universalism talks about the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. What is meaning but life boiled down to its essence, the essential facts of life? The third principle gives us a balanced way to seek meaning, free and responsible. Now, the free way requires no preparation. Sometimes meaning comes up and slaps us in the face. The unexpected death, job loss, any failure pushes us into the abyss of why. We ask, what does this mean? And other times meaning arrives as unexpected blessings. The loving look across the crowded room, a new opportunity, the perfect job that you never knew existed. New knowledge that shapes our lives and changes its course, giving us new meaning. It is possible to live as hunter-gatherers, finding meaning wherever it happens to be. But today I want to focus on the responsible search for truth and meaning. How do we cultivate meaning? Apples grow wild, yet if we plant an orchard, we will have more apples. Love happens spontaneously, yet if we work to make ourselves loving and lovable, it will happen more frequently. The universe is always full of infinity. But if we take an hour each week to ponder the infinite, a definite change in our life is more likely. There are times we should take responsibility and live deliberately. To live life as if we really mean it. What I am preaching today is simple, but practicing it is not. It's a sermon I need to give to myself as much as I need to give it to you. To cultivate meaning is to be intentional. To not let your life go to seed, but to harvest your seeds for the future. Cultivation begins with preparing the soil. And the soil of our soul is sleep. It is during the winter when the land lies fallow that it is restored. In autumn we prepare the soil. How do we prepare ourselves for sleep? Do we prune away excess thoughts and let our minds run still? Do we have an evening ritual before bedtime? Or do we just wait until the TV wakes us up with a loud ad after we have fallen asleep? Preparing oneself to sleep is the ground upon which dreams grow. Without rest, we will not have the strength to live deliberately. Cultivating sleep is the first step in cultivating meaning. How do we awake? Do we go to sleep early enough so that our body awakes naturally? Or do we need an alarm to wake us prematurely, then swill caffeine to stop the tide of unslept sleep? Picture the farmer in February with a snowmobile tractor with flamethrowers on the back, thawing the field prematurely. That is the way that many of us start the day. Burning early, then burning out. We rush into the day as if we are running through the thick of a forest, branches bending and slapping us in the face. What if we pause to chart our course for the day? What if we cultivated meaning? What if we lived deliberately? To live life as if we meant it, we might find a gentler path through the woods. What do we hope to accomplish in a day? How are we going to do it? What do we want to learn? Where will we look for wisdom? And always, why? 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 Who am I when I make choices about my circumstances? Who am I when circumstances force choices about my life? Am I reactive or proactive? The American marketplace is bountiful and full of instant gratification, from toaster strudel to hash browns in a paper pocket. Something for everyone, from all the food groups: fast, instant, deep fried, microwavable. Every drive-through is a drive-by flak attack to our system. What if we took time to savor our food? Consider how it is cultivated. By whom is it harvested? How is it prepared? With whom is it shared? There is meaning in food. Instead of mindless mastication, let us eat as if we mean it. Where shall we seek wisdom? We can easily find what feeds our biases, but we seldom cultivate curiosity. How often do we try to understand a different point of view? I sometimes do. And this is not to say that I will agree with every point of view, but I should understand a different point of view to know enough why somebody holds it and why I do not. Do we ever just listen to music on radio stations that we don't usually listen to? Often before church on Sunday, I watch the top 20 video countdown. I usually enjoy about 3. But I make myself listen because I certainly didn't want to be the person that I knew as a teenager who said, "Oh, your kid's music is just garbage. How can you listen to that?" I try to look for the good, to try to hear things that are different, and it changes me by forcing myself to listen to what I consider bad music. But I find those gems that I would never find if I wasn't open-minded. We live in an era of data overload. Pop-ups and ads, distractions lead us from one website to another. One can flit across the Twitterverse and never find a place to land. How often do we get to sit still and read a book? or even a Kindle. Snippets and sound bites surround us. When do we take time to learn one thing really well? Cultivation takes time. Time, like land, must be set aside for cultivation. We have a bedtime, but do we set aside 30 minutes before bedtime to prepare? We have a mealtime, but do we set aside 30 minutes before that mealtime to actually prepare a good meal? Our work exhausts our bodies. Do we set aside 30 minutes of exercise to strengthen our bodies? Our work and our lives exhaust our minds. Do we set aside 30 minutes of meditation to clear our mind? We enjoy time with our friends, but do we take the time to cultivate those friendships? A note, a phone call. Do we take time to cultivate community? The deliberate life demands that we set time aside. Stephen Covey, the author of The 7 Habits of Successful People, talks about the need to sharpen the saw. Imagine you are doing some good cultivating. You are pruning the trees. And we work harder and harder, cutting branch after branch. And every branch that we cut dulls the saw just a little. We should stop and sharpen the saw. But we don't take time because there are still so many branches to cut. So we cut more and more. And each branch we cut is harder and harder to cut as the saw gets duller and duller. But now that the saw's been dull and we've been so slow, we're even farther behind. So we really can't take time to sharpen the saw. And so we saw and saw until we're exhausted. We think we don't have time to prepare for bedtime, to prepare a meal, to meditate, to plan. But in the long run, stopping to sharpen the saw actually helps things go smoother. If we take no time to sleep, our waking hours are less effective. If we take no time to prepare a meal, our meals are less nutritional. If we take no time to clear our mind, we will think less clearly. If we take no time to learn something new, our curiosity will die. If we do not take time to cultivate community and family relations, we become more isolated. If we don't take time to build meaning in our lives become meaningless. This is why this church, is important. It is an exercise in cultivating community and relationship. It is a ritual to cultivate meaning. Life presents us with urgency after urgency. So many things clamor for our attention. But if we want meaningful lives, we need to be intentional. We set aside times to sleep, eat, and exercise. For if we do not set aside time for our body, we will have no energy for our souls. If we want meaning, we have to set aside time to think, to set a time to meditate, to cultivate an open and curious mind. Only when we know ourselves can we have honest relationships with others. And if we want those meaningful relationships, we must set aside time for them. Set aside time for a lover. Set aside time for family, for friends. Be intentional. Live deliberately. Live life as if we mean it. Let us cultivate lives of meaning. Look around. Look around at those gathered in this room. Vow to get to know these people better. You may have something to do after the service today. I hear the football season is starting. But you can miss the first quarter. Come to the potluck. Sit down. And don't try to get to know 50 people. Talk to the person next to you and get to know them a little better. We can help each other cultivate meaning if we make time for one another. Let us learn to live together, and together we can share what we learn with the world. A worship service is where we serve one another and help each other find meaning. And meaning gives us a sense of purpose and helps us serve the world.